This is Terms of Reference. I'm your host, Stephen Laddick. I have a confession to make. I'm fairly certain I underappreciate design, especially design as the cultural phenomenon it has become in everything from mobile phones to toilets. If you pay attention to the same types of feeds as me, well, first you probably need to get out more, but you know that design, as a critical practice for success, has come into its own in a massive way over the past 10 years, ever since Apple took over the hardware space and technology. My guest today for the 133rd Terms of Reference podcast, Ravi Chhatpar, believes that design also has an important seat at the humanitarian aid and development table. He's one of the co-founders of Dalberg's Design Impact Group, which is dedicated to helping their clients find creative approaches to breakthrough innovation for social impact. As you'll hear in our talk, DIG's process can help lead to better strategies for innovation, user-focused products and services, and catalyzing unique and creative outcomes from groups. I spoke with Ravi in London. Now, before we start the show, I want to give a shout out to those of you who have supported me by subscribing to the podcast, commenting on the blog, and sharing things in the social universe out there. Thank you very much. It helps a lot, and I really, really appreciate it. If you don't already count yourself among this group, please do take a moment to show your support for the show because it actually matters. Leave me a review in iTunes, share this episode with your community, or comment on the blog. It only takes 30 seconds, and if you're truly interested in making aid and development better, sign up for my newsletter and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode or an update. Now, on to the show with Ravi. Hello, Ravi. Thank you so much for being on the Terms of Reference podcast today.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Really excited to join you today for this conversation.
Where do we find you sitting today? I know that you are, like so many of our guests, an international person of mystery. Do we find you on the road? Are you at home? What's going on today?
Actually, you've caught me at a rare moment when I'm at home in London, which has been my home for the last 2.5 years. I feel like I've been living on planes recently, and will be continuing to do so until the end of the year. But it's nice to be home, even though it's cold and dreary in London in November.
I was going to say, we're recording this sort of close to the end of November. I'm an American, and I'm looking forward to Turkey Day tomorrow, actually. I guess I'll get to enjoy it since I'm in Bangkok, a full day before anybody else does. But
I wish I could say the same. I'm going to be on a plane trying to find some turkey.
Well, I was going to say, we'll hope that you are, whatever single serving that you get in your seat has a turkey component.
Exactly.
Even if it's processed. You are a co-founder of something called the Design Impact Group at Dalberg. Why don't we start by you just telling us about what does that mean? What is the Design Impact Group? How does it fit into Dalberg? How did this get started?
Okay, great. Sure. So Dalberg is a strategy and advisory consulting firm. It's been around for about 15 years, focuses on a wide variety of social impact and development topics ranging from financial inclusion to education to public health to gender empowerment. I joined Dalberg 2.5 years ago to start a new practice called the Design Impact Group. You could also call us DIG. And essentially, we're essentially Dalberg's design and innovation. So we really bring in human-centered design methods along with other methodologies that come from the design world, such as rapid prototyping and systems thinking and some other approaches, and integrate this into the broader set of offerings that Dalberg has so we can work with many underserved communities around the world to accelerate change and drive impact.
Why did the folks at Dalberg, when you and your other co-founder approached them, why did they think it was important to have human-centered design, as a part of the innovation conversation, as a part of where they needed to go next? Why was it a missing piece?
So I think this actually came out of a lot of, my history. I'd spent 10 years previously at an organization called Frog Design, which is a design and innovation firm that mainly focuses on the private sector. And I think through a lot of the work that I did and the growing interest that I had in working around some of these topics, such as financial inclusion and public health in particular, I came to the realization that design has so much power, it has so much potential, but it often needs to be really perfectly situated or contextualized, in a certain problem to really achieve the impact that we're all hoping for. And when you think about some of these topics that we're working on, that situation or that contextualization just doesn't exist. How do you ensure that you have organizations who are really motivated to focus on a problem? How do you ensure that the financing is there? How do you ensure that you know how to build and evaluate and measure any new solutions or recommendations or programs that emerge. These are questions that I think as designers we're not really well equipped to answer. But consultants, or management consultants in particular, have been developing expertise in this area for quite some time, and not just management consultants, many professionals in the development industry. The idea that my co-founder Robert and I had 2.5 years ago was, let's think about creating a design practice that could focus on these issues, but that would be very closely integrated with a broader set of capabilities, which includes advisory support, which includes strategy, measurement and evaluation, et cetera. And so we approached Dalberg with the idea of incubating human-centered design practice. They were quite excited about it. I think they felt that there was a lot of opportunity to do some new types of work and work on different types of projects, work on things that have a potential for greater impact overall, and deepen relationships with many clients. And so we went through an incubation period to basically test that model. So far, seems to be working. Many lessons learned along the way, but it seems to be working, and we're growing from there.
Is there a concrete example you could put on the table, just sort of out of the gate here, about how something you and Robert or the team that you're working with, how you've changed the way Dalberg has approached a problem, or how you've gone to a client in a different way, or how you've had a different outcome or result that that we could really sink our teeth into?
Sure. So, for example, we're doing a lot of work right now in a few countries in Africa, focused on essentially at the intersection of financial inclusion, agriculture, and mobile technology. So the question is, how could we bring digital services or mobile-based services to smallholder farmers, particularly the most rural, hard-to-reach smallholder farmers, to help improve their livelihoods? When you think about an engagement like that, there are many things that need to happen. We need to bring together the right set of partners who may not individually have capabilities to tackle this problem, but who collectively could approach it. We need to secure financing to ensure that all of these partners have budgets and motivations to kind of work together. We need to go through a design process to generate new products, to rapidly prototype them, to evaluate them on the market. We need to support piloting of these new ideas to ensure that they're actually operationalized and working and have all the right kind of teams and people behind them to bring them to life. And then we need to measure and evaluate the success of these to ensure that they're actually accomplishing our impact objectives. And so that type of integration, starting from understanding the partner landscape, bringing partners together, bringing in the right financing, that's something that traditionally would be owned by Dalberg. Right? But then we could come in soon after that and bring in some of the rapid prototyping, the product design, the technology development, and the pilot support activities. And then later, Dalberg could kind of go through a measurement and evaluation process to determine what we've learned. Then we can go through another round of prototyping and product improvement, and then think about how we can use the learnings to migrate the whole platform into another country. Right. So that ability to kind of work over a much longer time frame. In this case, it's a 6-year engagement, and seamlessly and fluidly kind of bring in the different capabilities to take an idea from just an initial problem to very concrete solutions that are evolved and iterated in the market is really the premise of why we're here.
I'm going to ask what I hope is not a deal breaker showstopper in our conversation, but you've just described a process that, if I try to map it over the traditional funding model in development and aid, it falls apart. It breaks down, right? We just, you don't normally see a USAID exactly. or a DFID or whatever, put a grant on the table or put a contract, more important, we're all, contracts are more and more prevalent. Put a contract over the table, like, hey, figure it out along the way. And we're going to trust that you're going to show up 6 years from now and you're going to have results. Like, how does that work?
Well, I mean, I think what you're raising is actually a very important kind of point that we felt was a key driver for why we decided to shape dig in this way. In the private sector, for example, I think you're increasingly seeing amongst many large clients, many corporations that we would work with at Frog, for example, your leading Fortune 500 firms like your Intels and your Disneys and your Microsofts and such. Design and innovation more broadly has been accepted over the years, and you increasingly find design represented at the highest levels of decision making. So you'll have, in some cases, chief design officers or chief experience officers or people on the boards of companies who are bringing in the design perspective and ensuring that this process of iteration and this process of living with uncertainty and not taking an answer first, approach and assuming we know things from the beginning, we're ensuring that that's represented at the beginning of an initiative. And that's why many of these companies are able to be so successful and innovate quickly. But in the development space, we don't see that as often. And so our hope through this effort as well is that we could elevate the role of design as well. We could be having a seat at some of the tables and some of the conversations where design has traditionally not had a seat. That means in this case is sitting at the table with some of those funders right at the beginning of the year when they're planning their funding agendas and determining where some of these efforts should be focused, or when partners are thinking about working together for the first time and are feeling one another out, injecting ourselves into those conversations to see how design could help bring out their capabilities in some new ways. And so I think Dalberg for us represents a really powerful platform to tap into some of those networks and start positioning design as something that development organizations and players think about sooner.
So human-centered design, it's a buzzword. Most of the people listening to the show will probably have heard of it. But at the same time, many of those people as well, they design development programs. They design humanitarian aid or humanitarian assistance interventions all the time, right? Proposals are going out every day to funders and to support networks and whatnot. How is human-centered design different? What does it offer, and what are the core tenets that may be separated from, a stock standard design process?
You're getting at something that actually is a key. This is a key debate that we discuss so often. And what you're saying is so true. And I think what we struggle with often is that the design community does not take the right, or does not approach issues with the right level of humility. In fact, if you look at people who've been social enterprises that have been working in communities for the last 10 years, right in the middle of a crisis situation. Or,
sure, yeah, they're going to say, look, we know our community, we get the people, we've been there.
That is exactly that is human-centered design. I mean, they're listening to people, they're prototyping, they're coming up with new solutions, they're testing. That is human-centered design, and we're not trying to in any way say that that's different from what we're doing. I think the approach that the way that I like to describe it is, there are a set of tools, right? There are a set of methodologies, there are a set of practices that have been developed and sharpened through work in the private sector, through work in different industries, and through just the training of being a designer that could be used to augment and enhance many of the activities that are already happening through these various actors every day. And a big part of what we want to do is not try to come in with, obviously, there's a set of tools and language and processes, and if you have a bunch of designers around, we could all geek out about what our favorite framework is. But that's not the approach we want to bring into this work. We really believe that there are existing models out there. Let's understand those models, see what works with those models, and see how we can enhance them, strengthen them. In some cases, we may introduce a more formal process, or try to codify a tool, or push a certain approach that we think is missing. But in many cases, we're happy to see what's out there and really just work with existing models and tools, and just bring in some different thinking.
As you look forward, you're 2 years into this venture. Before I ask that looking forward, can you give us, what are some of the stumbling blocks that have been along the way? You said yourself that there have been some multiple lessons learned. What are some of your top two lessons that you've learned, or falls on your face, your fails that you've now, you're now bringing into your process?
Yep. Sure. I feel like we're failing regularly and learning quickly from those failures, or trying to learn quickly from those
That's
failures.
awesome. That's great.
Part of, we have to approach it with a bit of a spirit of optimism and experimentation. We're trying to bring this human perspective and a variety of design approaches into some very new places. And so inevitably, it's not going to always work out the way we hope. One concrete example is, we were working with our strategy colleagues at Dalberg on something that would be considered a pretty hardcore kind of conventional strategy piece of work, which is how do you design a new investment facility, multi-billion-dollar investment facility that is intended to support development of hundreds of millions of jobs for youth in Africa over the course of 10 years. That is a classic for a developmental bank, right? That is a classic kind of strategy mandate, but we thought that there could be some interesting ways to bring in more of the youth perspective, rapidly prototype some ideas, and see how that all comes together.
Can you break that down? So did Dalberg assemble their usual team, and of course I'm imagining a bunch of people in white shirts and ties, sitting around, with a whiteboard. Did they have you like red shirted and you're or red team it, where they're like, look, here's what we came up with it, tell us what we did wrong, or how did they plug you into that process then?
Well, I think so. That's you're getting to exactly what the crux of the challenge is. Well, firstly, what's nice about Dalberg is everyone does not sit around in suits. Like many
I do not mean to demean Dalberg at all. Yeah.
Yes, I know. But I think the challenge here emerged because the conventional approach to tackling this type of problem is to take more of a critical thinking based approach, right? You're developing an issue tree, you're developing a set of hypotheses that need to be validated about how this solution should work. More of a design thinking led approach would be insights driven, right? We're not actually starting with pre-existing hypotheses, and you take the time to really understand not just people's needs, but really what drives people, in this case, youth, their aspirations, their experiences, and you use that as a way to inform a set of ideal programs and interventions and strategies and solutions that could emerge. And then once you have those, you could then decide what is the best structure required or the delivery mechanism required, i.e., in this case, the fund, the investment facility, to deliver that. And in some ways, it's more of a bottom-up or inside-out approach as opposed to a top-down approach. So I think we all decided, well, it would be great to bring in both of these perspectives into this engagement. But when it actually comes down to how you engage over the course of 3 months, or in this case, it was closer to 6 months, how you resource teams, what people are working on a day-to-day basis, you're almost trying to marry two philosophically opposed, although in fact I think that they can be quite complementary, but two philosophically different approaches, and that results in a lot of it can result in tension in terms of what you're creating when, the timelines you're moving to, and what the right balance of focus on certain activities or tasks is. And those are the types of, I feel, conversations that we're having or facing on a regular basis as we try to push design into some different places. There are times when we know we're taking more of a human-centered design-led approach, sometimes because it's clear that we're trying to design a product or a service or a strategy. In some cases, it's clear that it's more of a strategy-led approach. But in many cases, there's not a single answer. Design is not the right answer to all problems. A strategy-led approach isn't the right answer to all problems. A financing-led approach isn't the right answer either. And so the tricky part when you marry different specializations or different capabilities together, how you know when you use one approach versus the other, how you know when you hybridize them, how you know when you move from one to another. All of these are kind of tricky issues.
Do you find, having moved from the commercial sector at Frog to, really basically saying, we're doing development now here at Dig, do you find that people look at you as a disruptor? Do you have a community within the development community that was pre-existing that, people you can run ideas off? I mean, are you kind of sitting out on a limb going, we're figuring this out? Or I'm trying to get a sense of how disruptive is this? Is this really, holy smokes, this is totally new stuff? Or is there already existing community you're tapping into?
I would say it varies quite a bit. There are definitely sectors that we work in and, particular clients or funders who we interact with who I'd say for many years, even, before the time of Dig, have appreciated human-centered design kind of in its kind of contemporary form. And often, for example, the financial inclusion sector and the public health sector, probably or possibly because of their proximity to the traditional financial services world and the traditional healthcare world, which have embraced a variety of design and innovation approaches for a while. So you find there are communities there that are quite eager to do this, and where you find many people who are well versed in design practices, and it's great to operate in that environment. On the other hand, there are sectors and places where we work where we're speaking a completely foreign language, and it just requires a lot of education, a lot of relationship building, and at times just a real, just a willingness to try some things, go for some small initial projects, go for things that wouldn't necessarily be characterized as innovation or or even design, but we're just bringing in a few pieces of the methods and trying to create an experience that feels different and fulfilling, and use that as momentum to eventually evolve into something more full-fledged. But for those cases, it will take time. This is not something that this is not a transformation of the industry or by any means, or a disruption that everyone is paying attention to. It does require work, and we have to kind of prove ourselves. In fact, I feel like we're honored to kind of sit at this table, right? That many other types of practices and specializations have been sitting at for some time, and we don't want to assume that we can just walk in and just wave the human-centered design flag and have everyone follow us.
Do you find that a good deal of your tasks are focused on the sort of the product end of it? As you're obviously very aware, the ICT for D conversation, the ICT for humanitarian aid conversation is very robust. It's, everybody wants the mobile phone app or the technology solution for their development or humanitarian aid intervention. Do you find that you spend a lot of time there, or is it really across the board? You're talking about small, investment platforms for small farmers and those kinds of things. I guess my question is product the easy way for people to wrap their head around why design is important? Or do people come to you and say, hey, we need this process for behavior change and we're not sure how to do it, kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a bit of all of what you just mentioned. I mean, there definitely is a good portion, probably 30% of our work is product or service design oriented, in the sense that we're trying to get to something somewhat tangible at the end. And it is true that many people will understand that flavor of design kind of right away. And there's no question of letting a design-led approach guide those projects just because it's assumed to be the right approach for that. But in some cases, we have to be careful, because we're overly focusing on product, right? And what a product looks like and its features and how it works and how it feels and the experience around it. And in some cases can undermine the broader story that we're talking about, which is more of the design thinking story, right? Of design as a tool to drive behavioral change, cultural change, as a tool to inform strategic decision making and all of that. So we do have, we try to keep our portfolio pretty balanced. So we do a lot of work that is more of that innovation strategy flavor of work, where we're trying to use some of the methods of design as a way to drive change inside organizations. And that may result in organizations that create their own products and services, that launch campaigns, that engage in advocacy, all types of things. And then, I'd say a third major category, which is quite important, is that we, in the spirit of what I was mentioning before, there are about practitioners and innovators already doing this in the real world. How do we support them? So there's a good piece of our work that has a flavor of capacity building, where we're working with innovators, trying to augment what they do, but really letting them move forward with their own process. And we just really, try to support them around what their objectives are and help them build organizations around them.
Speaking of which, both you and Robert came to this to dig from Frog. Did you already feel like you had the chops to come in and on day one be effective as far as the jargon, the lingo, who the players are in the space and those kinds of things from your previous work, or was it something where you had kind of dipped your toe in a couple places and you smelled an opportunity and said, and now you're 2 years later, I guess at this point 2 years later you know what you're doing, but right out of the gate, were you like, how do we tread water here?
It's interesting because Frog does have an impact practice, and both Robert and I were involved in that in our time at Frog. Obviously, Frog focuses on many different types of work and primarily commercial private sector work, but there was quite a bit of work in public health and financial inclusion and education as well. And so we did gain experience and familiarity through our work at Frog in some of these topics. And I spent 6.5 years of my 10 years at Frog in China and 2 years in Africa, in South Africa and Uganda. And so I did get more exposure to that community as well. So I felt prepared to start my own design practice and to approach Dalberg to do something like this. But at the same time, I think stepping into an environment that is fully focused on this type of work was definitely quite a change. I think I developed very quickly a deep appreciation and respect for just how much knowledge there is, how much I don't know, how many domains that I heard about and perhaps had a passing understanding of really had much more depth and sophistication than to them than I ever really appreciated. And I think which made, I think it really validated the decision to start Dig within Dalberg, because it just, it's so incredible to be able to just tap into that level of expertise and knowledge and the networks.
As you look forward here over let's just call it the next 2.5 years, sort of two parallel questions. One, what's your focus as far as building your practice? You're saying it's you've got to educate your clients. You're participating in some projects, and you sort of have other things you're putting on the table. Is there a particular place where you say, we really want to get to X in order to say, this is not only proof of our model, but we really will hit our stride if we get there? That's one question. But then, what are you bringing in from the design world, design literature, design thinkers, those kinds of things, into this space? Is there are there new components that you haven't even thought about bringing in, or new ideas or new concepts, or is it all really sort of part of the whole package?
I could answer both of those questions with one answer, which really gets at the strategy for growing our team. The challenge here, and I think the number one risk we put on our business plan, because I think there was, in my mind, there was no doubt that the client demand was there, that the potential for impact was there, but was really around the team. Like, there's traditionally the design and strategy worlds do not have a good reputation of coexisting together. Strategy practices in design firms acquired by strategy firms, like there's a lot of drama, for understandable reasons. And so I think one of our big concerns is, like, what does it take to build a design team, a creative culture inside a very strong kind of management consulting culture, which we also really believe in. And so how do you do that in a way that works? We have a distributed team. We don't have the benefit of a classic kind of studio model that brings everyone together when you feel you're kind of, together in one place, sharing cross-pollinating ideas. We're trying to have a few distributed studios, currently New York, London, Nairobi, and Mumbai, with our team that are all kind of co-located within the broader set of Dalberg offices. And I think overall it's working well. I mean, we have a fantastic team that I'm really excited about, but ensuring that team is able to grow and kind of operate successfully kind of in a very integrated environment is challenging. It takes a special breed of designer who's looking for that type of challenge. And it requires creating the right culture around them, the mentorship structure around them, giving people the right project opportunities that balance some of the more conceptual strategy stuff, like the investment facility, and then making stuff. Right? A lot of designers, we like to build, we like to create, and making things that are tangible. Getting that balance right is tricky. So, over time, I feel like that's really the biggest challenge. If you can keep the team happy and keep the team growing in a responsible way, then everything else tends to fall into place. And that gets at kind of the second question you were getting at in terms of how we bring in new skills. We're not really formally looking for, we would like to bring in this methodology, we would like to bring in this toolkit, and so we want this type of person. A lot of the way we think about growing our team is from the perspective of teams. What is the right configuration of capabilities that we could combine in different permutations across our locations to tackle a wide range of problems. And so that means we do have people who all have a common set of capabilities around whether it's design research or creative facilitation or ideation or prototyping, but also many specializations as well. Right? You'll have people who come from more of a systems thinking background or more of an interaction design background or more of a industrial design background. And so I think we're always trying to bring in a diversity of people that have some commonality, and then really using our project work as an experiment to really see how that's deployed. Obviously, Robert and I bring in a certain kind of frog bias, right, around the methodologies and tools that we use. And we love when our team members are able to kind of bring in some different ways of thinking or different ways of problem solving. We're encouraging that regularly and seeing what sticks. With some clients, certain approaches will stick more than others, and we don't feel the need we need to formalize or codify, the Dig way is this way.
Are you sure you don't want the Dig way? I mean, that just sounds kind of cool. This is the Dig way.
It does, yeah. Let me think about that.
So you kind of have led me to a next question I have is there a way to create or to make this including the design process, a standard operation. Is that something that Dalberg is looking to do, where you're always a part of a team, or you're always a part of? Don't slap me for saying this, but you're kind of a part of that checklist that they go through. They're like, hey, have we consulted the design group, on this particular thing, or do you want to be a part of that? You don't want to be a standardized process.
What's nice now is after we've come out of our incubation phase, we're formally part of Dalberg, and we're an integrated business within the Dalberg family, of which holds a variety of different businesses, and so we're part of the firm's partnership and overall kind of decision making and strategic planning process. And so I think we have an opportunity to bring design into more places now than we did when we started, which is which is due to the success of the business overall. But we're still, I'd say we're definitely not trying to enforce anything that's like a checklist. But I think we really want to create a bit more of an organic model where certain partners, certain teams, certain people across Dalberg, they believe that there's an opportunity for design to come in. They'll bring us in, they'll reach out to us, and we'll have those conversations. At times we have visibility into other things going on across the firm, and we'll try to inject ourselves, but we're not trying to force it, which means that at times there's situations we hear about work that happens and we wonder, that could have been an interesting thing for us to get involved with. But that's okay. I feel like we're very much, we don't believe that design needs to be at the table every time. And we want people to, if anything, have a belief that different methodologies, different approaches can coexist and are complementary to one another. And if anything, people should try to achieve, fluency across multiple approaches, because that's actually what allows you to serve our clients better.
The last two questions I have for you are two that I ask every guest here on the Terms of Reference podcast. And the first one is who do you pay attention to in order to stay up to date, not only stay fresh in design, but also absorb whatever you need to about a particular project or where the industry is going? Are there blogs you particularly pay attention to, magazines you read? You go out and listen to the park. I don't know. Is there anything that you'd put on the table that you think are good sources of information for others?
I always feel a bit sheepish when someone asks me this type of question, because I don't have a set of great thinkers or writers or blogs or sources like that who I can regularly point to. I actually try to avoid, in general, a lot of the quote official or leading thinking kind of in this space. And I know there's a lot I can learn from it, and partially it's due to time, and I make a variety of other excuses. But in reality, I feel the biggest inspiration for me, it always is about participating in the actual work that we're doing, and particularly making the time to engage in some of the primary kind of community immersive research that we conduct. I feel like so many examples of the most creative things I see out there are not based on application of tools or an organization doing something amazing, but it's when I'm in a remote part of Rwanda and run across a woman in a savings and loans group who's, after weeks of traveling, who's come up with, basically invented a new financial instrument, which is a savings group that allows her to save up for a grass mattress, which is then used to encourage husbands to stay at home to combat the infidelity issue that they have in their village. It's like, that's just insane creativity that just shows you that there's so much to learn from the people we're actually trying to impact. And when you find those stories, which doesn't happen all the time for sure, and takes a lot of work, I feel like that's the most rewarding and inspirational part of the work. And it really changes your perspective on what you call creative or innovative.
The last question I have for you is just an opportunity to geek out. You're a guy on a plane. You're interfacing with lots and lots of clients around the globe. You get to see all kinds of ideas coming across your desk. Is there something outside the design space in the humanitarian aid or development space that you think is particularly interesting? Or you just mentioned this particular innovation in Rwanda, but something that's kind of on the fringes that's up and coming that you're paying attention to that you think deserves a shout out?
One that I'm really kind of interested about, and it's actually a classic idea. It's an old idea that I feel has not been paid as much attention as it could be. Is just the concept of loyalty and incentive models. And think about you're building on the airline analogy, right? Your airline miles or your credit card points or those types of programs. We've been exploring a few of these ideas, in a merchant payments context in Tanzania, with farmers around purchasing inputs and seeds and fertilizer in Mali and Senegal. And it's really interesting to see how some of those same notions of loyalty could be applied to really drive deeper engagement, significantly deeper engagement, around some new products or services or solutions that are coming to life. And you tend to find that there are not many examples of that that are really where they've been rolled out in the context of education or in the context of financial inclusion or public health. And so I wouldn't say I have a firm point of view yet on how successful these are, but I feel like I have a good hunch that based on some of the places where I've seen these start to work, there's a real opportunity to just bring in that layer to a lot of what's designed, and it could have a significant impact.
Ravi, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Really enjoyed this conversation as well.
You've been listening to the Terms of Reference podcast from Aidpreneur.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes.